the Narendra Modi government has banned another 43 mobile apps. This is the third round of ban by the Modi government. Remember, it has been doing so under Section 69A of the Information Technology Act. While at the outset it looks as if because all these apps are Chinese, the government has been quite adamant that it is not the ownership of the apps which is a problem, but more importantly, what these apps do for Indian users, what they do with the data, where it's stored, whether it's harvested, can they read devices, can the data on the devices be modified, that and a lot more. Joining me to talk about this, the latest app ban that we've seen, 43 apps that include those of the Alibaba group, as well as a short video format snack, is my next guest, Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, who's joining us. The reason we're getting him is because he, as part of the association, had written to the government about missing out on banning Snack, saying that not only was Snack Chinese, but it was affecting Indian users because it was compromising their data. Jayajit Bhattacharya, thanks so much for joining us here on Startup Central. I remember interviewing you on the day we got to know about how you had written to the government saying Snack video should be banned. Now you've seen 43 apps together that are being banned. My first question to you is that, is this the way to go? We are not seeing similar actions by other countries, but India is quite firm that it's going to continue to stay on this path. It's going to be absolutely clear that as far as data protection goes, it's going to have the last word, that the apps have to be very clear on what they do with the Indian users' data.
Other countries aren't doing what we're doing. Well, China actually has already done this to many other applications and companies for the last 2 decades, if not since earlier. In fact, way back in the 17th century, the British Parliament actually banned Indian ships from being used for importing stuff into UK by slapping in a large tax on those ships. And that was basically preventing the superior Indian ships from coming in. So this kind of an action has been going on forever. In this particular case, the government took this step in view of actually security concerns rather than a protectionist measure. Unlike what the government of China did or the government of Britain did and so on and so forth, why the other countries aren't really doing it, even though they have been voicing their very severe concerns on what the Chinese apps are doing to their economy and to the society, including the US government voicing very strong concerns about some of the Chinese apps being operated there, is because they have a fear of being of their digital companies being also retaliated against by China. In case of India, because of the barriers in China, we don't really have too many digital companies operating in China. So if we ban the Chinese apps because of their activities in India and because of their illegal use of data in India, there isn't much of a retaliation that the Chinese government can do against India. In fact, if you look at the trade balance, anyways, we are importing very little from China compared to what, we are exporting very little to China compared to what China is importing from India. And most of what we are exporting are really raw materials in that sense, which is what is needed to actually drive manufacturing.
But do we really... But Jayajit Bhattacharya, do we really also want to follow the one country that we're having geopolitical tensions, skirmishes with, which is China? I think the larger problem is that what does India, is it not about time that we prescribe rules and have very clear-cut rules that if you have a mobile application, this is what the app can do, irrespective of the domicile, that it can get access to this data, this is what you're signing off on, that this is what it can read, this is where it can store, this is what it can harvest, this is how it can sell to third party. Isn't it also time that India come out with all of that? Because the fact is that you have a lot of mobile applications which are accessing that kind of data without the users being aware of it.
No, absolutely, yes. On the second part, that there are not just Chinese apps, but many other apps which are gathering information far beyond what they need for providing the service for which they are taking the data. And clearly what you're saying makes sense. But to the first part, as to can we have a clearly laid out rules, which then says that this is how an app can operate, that is not practically possible because of the nature of the technology. The nature of the technology keeps changing. And if I take an example of regulatory policies that that addresses such fast-moving technologies. I think the CFIUS Act of US is an excellent example where it provides the ability for the US government to step in and stop any sale of technology company, but it does not lay out what are the parameters under which a technology can be acquired and not acquired in US. But subsequently, post facto, the government can step in, analyze, and stop that sale from happening. It is because in technology companies, you really can't put out a very clear-cut regulation which can then clearly define that which technology or which entity or which app can be damaging to the country. You cannot imagine that small information about what is a general's daughter purchasing, or what is she saying, or what does the prime minister's advisors are doing, and capturing all of that information, the impact that can have on national security is enormous. Can we lay out the rules and say that, well, these apps cannot capture sound for that matter? Well, there are apps which are legitimately capturing sound. There is Amazon Echo, which is capturing sound, and it's giving you a service. But there are other apps which are capturing information, which is not needed for the service that they're providing. In fact, that's also the case with when you have the public sector apps, where unnecessarily much of the data gets captured. We do have a Privacy Act that's coming in, but it's still not in place. And till the time it's not in place, we just can't put data capture as one of the parameters by which an app can be legitimized or made illegitimate. But data capture is only one aspect of how an app can compromise national security. There are many other aspects by which an app can compromise national security, and we still don't have a complete handle on what it could be because of the nature of technology, which is extremely fast evolving.
Okay. So these are some of the things that we need to continue to think about. But Ajit Bhattacharya, I think the message is, of course, loud and clear, that the government is continuing to monitor. And as we've seen in the latest list as well, and we saw that in the second round, that if you do see the mushrooming of VPNs or just names being changed, the government is going to be vigilant. And of course, I would imagine there are whistleblowers in the system too, which help.
Absolutely. If you look at Snap Video, the one that you were referring to, it's basically a rebranded app. It was Quay earlier. It was already banned. Either we challenge the first ban, or we are completely fine with the second ban, because it's basically the same app repackaged and brought back again. Even the employees were saying, you can go to the LinkedIn profile and check, and they were earlier working in Quay, and now they're working in Snap Video. And then there are apps which address very critical sectors of the country, such as the logistics sector. We have Lala Move, which is capturing a large part of the of logistics, and that could be extremely damaging when it's coming from an adversarial country. If our troops are in the front and our logistics is getting compromised in the back end because it's going through such apps, you can imagine the fighting capability that we'll have. It'll be highly degraded fighting capability just because our logistics has been compromised in the back end. So we need to be extremely careful as to the sectors that these apps are coming in, and this cannot be laid out a priori. And that's the challenge that we are facing. We have seen that apps are coming back as rebranded. We are seeing apps that are coming in through various other mechanisms. For example, they're coming through VPNs, or they're coming through APKs that can be downloaded from websites. And there are a fresh set of apps coming in which are simply changing their country of origin, repackaging themselves and coming back, but really backed by the same set of players who really have deep ties with militaries of other countries, and they're actually being backed by both the government and the military of other countries. And especially when those countries are adversarial in nature from with India, we need to be extremely careful of what we're using.
A lot to think about. Dr. Ajit Bhattacharya, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Startup Central. The Modi government banning 43 more apps, sending out a very clear message that a mere change in name is not going to mean that the government is not being vigilant and continuing to monitor. With that, we'll take a short commercial break, but stay tuned. A lot more lined up on the other side. We'll also talk about the world's second richest man. He's just overtaken Bill Gates to claim the second top spot.